Hello, everyone. My name is Star Fuentes, and I am one of the Fair Media Council student ambassadors here to introduce the one-on-one chat with the Fair Media Council CEO and Executive Director, Jackie Clement, and noted U.S. presidential historian, Douglas Brinkley. Don't forget to share your thoughts and ask your questions inside that chat box below. Good afternoon, Jackie.
Thank you so much, Star.
Move it toward you.
There you are. And there is Douglas Brinkley joining us from, I believe, CNN studios. Is that right, Doug?
Well, I am at Rice University, and I'm about to have to do my real job, go on CNN with Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper covering the Senate impeachment trial.
All right. Well, for as long as we have you, we are grateful for your time. Let me begin by giving you a formal introduction for our audience today, which is Douglas Brinkley is the Katherine Tsanoff Brown Chair in Humanities and Professor of History at Rice University, also CNN presidential historian, and a contributing editor at Vanity Fair. The Chicago Tribune dubbed him America's new past master, and the New York Historical Society has chosen Douglas Brinkley as their official U.S. presidential historian. So thank you so much again, Doug, for joining us today. This is part of our annual conference called the News Conference, Real and Powerful. So to talk to you today about the state of America and the American presidency is a highlight for today's agenda. So let's just get to it. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks. I've gone through on the campaign like everybody else on election day, and then the sad, grim moment on January 6th, 2021, which will live forever in American history, a day of infamy when our U.S. Capitol was sieged. But we had Joe Biden and Kamala Harris sworn in. We're still fighting COVID. There's fears of new variants that might be coming our way, but there's also excitement that the vaccine process and the ability to distribute it in a smart logistical matters picking up. So I'm hopeful that we're going to get back on track here in the next few months.
Okay. Where we are right now, could you compare where we are right now to any other time in American history or no?
Not really. I mean, I look at the Civil War. If you look at the election in 1860, Abraham Lincoln wasn't on the ballot in 7 southern states. He wasn't seen as a real president. And that whole period there, what led to the Civil War, is obviously the darkest and bloodiest period in U.S. history. But this is getting in there. I mean, this is like a lower grade of that. It's kind of a neo-Civil War played out on social media and hate groups. But there's a deep divide in the country. There's no doubt about it. And we'll have to see how things play out. We're not out of crisis yet. I think the amount of anger in the U.S. is palatable. And it's things can become apples and oranges. I mean, during the Vietnam War, we lost 58,000 dead in a senseless war, and many more maimed. And but COVID. Is Trump to blame for COVID? Is he partially to blame? I mean, historians are going to be looking at this pandemic and how America seems to have been utterly unprepared to control it or defeat it in a quick amount of time. But the good news is some of our R&D is kicking in, and now capitalism is sort of driving the story by getting different companies to get vaccines, and we are slowly starting to get shots in our arms. My dad's 93 and he got his first shot, and he's very excited next week to get his shot. And that will start calming some waters when people 65 or older feel that they've been inoculated.
Okay. Let me key into one thing that you just said, though, and that goes back to the anger and the rage that people in America are feeling right now. What do you attribute that to?
I think racism is a big part of American history. I think whether you're dealing not just with the original sins of slavery, the Middle Passage to the New World, all of the horrible stories of that the Civil War was central to, We then had Jim Crow laws and segregation laws, and this a sense of white entitlement, white empowerment. And it's been there. I mean, George Wallace, ran a great third party run and did well when he ran as a Democrat, as a rank segregationist. Strom Thurmond in 1948 ran as a Dixiecrat, that he doesn't believe in equal rights between blacks and whites. And so, and particularly in the red states of today, the southern states, where there is still a feeling that the North, in this case, East Coast elites are telling the South what to do. And while the South says, hey, our states have less problems than you do, California, with all your environmental laws and burning wildfires and climate change. In New York City, you can't even go in your subways but of COVID. But here in back roads of Alabama or Texas or Oklahoma, we feel we're doing better. We feel we're doing okay. And so there's kind of a revenge going on in the South for the Civil War, because the Sun Belt's now attracted a lot of money. I mean, in Texas, where I'm at, people don't realize San Antonio's the 7th largest city in the country. Yeah. And Austin, Houston is 4th largest. Austin, is 11th. Dallas, Fort Worth, one of the largest metro areas in the country. And people keep moving into Texas and moving into places where taxes are lower and where you don't have corporate taxes. So there's a kind of blue versus gray Civil War mentality going on now. And it's all been exacerbated by the social media, by the fact that a young person can get on a hate site and a white supremacy site or a site of violence in any kind of form and get addicted to it quickly. And so we may be, and then we're shopping conspiracy theories galore. You're dealing with millions of Americans who think Neil Armstrong didn't go to the moon. We're not teaching civics in high school anymore. There's no real sense of public service. We have kind of a history amnesia. People don't even know when World War I is in the United States. And so we've got some issues. I think getting back to education and teaching what democracy is, paying teachers more money, and starting to be able to have classes for internet education, not just handing iPhones to 12 years old and let them at it, might be a way to start helping.
Okay. All right. You did touch on the state of the two-party system in America. Do you see that as relevant to these times? I mean, are we looking at a time when a third and fourth major party may be emerging?
It's hard to run a big third party. Ross Perot did it in 1992. He was also a billionaire willing to spend his own money, and he did get 19% of the vote. I think the threat of the moment for the Republicans is Donald Trump saying, I'll create a MAGNA party. If you turn on me, if the Republican Party wants to get rid of me, I'll take my base and I'll run a third party. And he probably has half of the Republican Party on his side. So we're in a difference between the big feud going on between Republicans and Democrats, Trumpians and non-Trumpians, rural versus urban, Black versus white, general discrimination against Native Americans, women, gender discrimination. The list is long, but there is really a fight for whatever is the Republican Party going on right now between Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. And we'll only know in the next few months whether Trump could ever be a viable third party candidate or whether he'll be still the mainstay of the Republican Party.
Okay. All right. It does seem like we have two Americas right now, doesn't it? Right?
Two different media sources that people tune into, two different sets of facts.
That's where I was going to go with that. The role that the news media is playing in the American divide right now. Is there anything in history that is comparable to that? I mean, I realize we wouldn't have had Twitter and Facebook throughout our history, but if you just look at, the mainstream mass media, can you draw any parallels to our
Well,
history there?
the free press is essential for America, and our early republic. For example, the election of 1800, it was just brutal what the newspapers were, demonizing John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson. So there's always been this, rub of partisan newspapers. We had less of that starting with approximately the World War II era, when we were all in it together. And there was a honeymoon period where reporters even gave presidents breaks. Journalists didn't report on the daily doings of, they didn't even photograph Franklin Roosevelt for being in a wheelchair because they thought that was unseemly, let alone dare talk about a president having an affair, or let alone dare intimating about the illness of a particular president. I think Watergate changed all of that. I mean, all the president's men went to jail. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Dean, Mitchell, Colson, the list is long. And Nixon should have been impeached, but he resigned and got a pardon from Gerald Ford. And since then, the press has been, I think, more and more adversarial. At the same time, they're becoming more partisan. And so you're having two different kind of pack dogs going on in the country. What some people would call the traditional media, the New York Times, Washington Post, CBS, on and on. And then the new media of the right, led by Fox, New York Post, things that Steve Bannon does, other alt-right platforms. And they're crashing. And if any person watch MSNBC one night and watch the Fox the next night, you're getting two different realities of what's going on in America. But it's still a semblance of balance, because sponsors are buying ads. Big Subaru's buying ads on both networks. But when you get onto the internet world, people just start peeling off into two different camps. And and I find it that it's a low ebb of public trust in journalism. I wrote a book on Walter Cronkite, and when he left the presidency in 1980, when he left CBS anchor job in 1981, journalists had about a 70% approval rating. They're down to like 20% now. So the public's lost some of its sense of who to trust. And there is no Walter Cronkite. There is no referee on the food fight that is American politics. And the stakes are high right now when you have things like COVID crisis and climate change and poverty and systemic racism. I mean, these are giant issues, and we somehow need to fight them, work together. I keep dreaming. My last book was called American Moonshot, John F. Kennedy and the Great Space Race. And I wrote it because I remember when people all did something big together. Everybody was cheering Neil Armstrong on the moon. I don't know what that moonshot is today. I don't know what we can do that pulls the country together, short of a war or some kind of terror attack, and we don't want either of those. So something hopefully will pull us together, and we think of ourselves as Americans. I'm Catholic, so I go to Catholic church, and if I'm going to get communion, I'm not worried about who in communion line, if that's a Democrat or Republican, if they voted for Trump or not. I'm just in church. And I think at a local level, a lot of our communities don't have quite the animosity and hatred towards neighbor that we're seeing on these social media platforms, and in kind of staged pseudo events that keep going on that are hate-filled.
Yeah. Well, let's focus a little bit on the media itself today, because one of the striking differences that I see happening is the speed of the news cycle. Everything is very reactionary. Everything is of the minute, and what's news today isn't news in 5 minutes from now. Everyone's forgotten about it. I think that plays into what you said earlier about having no sense of history, because we keep living every moment in the moment and forgetting what's happening behind us. Do you think we would be better off as a country with the slower news cycle?
Well, I do. But look, I also still use a flip phone.
I saw you on it too.
I find there's some great dangers with media technology. I'm not a big booster of it. That's why I don't use Twitter. I don't do platforms. I don't do very many of a Zoom like events. I like reading books and taking nature hikes. So I'm old fashioned. Because it gets too fast. If you're watching and listening and reading, every minute you think the doomsday is upon you, and it's not very good for the soul. And so I try to read my news and consume the news in a way that's going to fit in with my mindfulness, my sense of my daily life, and my 3 children and my wife, and put it in proportion. But if you're fired up and watching that stuff 24/7, you're ready to you start pulling your hair out. And
Yeah.
and yet it is a really dangerous world out there right now. And we've got to find ways to bring the right issues to the public. Why can't we stop all testing of nuclear weapons, a global moratorium on nuclear weapons testing in our atmosphere? Why can't we come up with working on climate solutions in a global way? Those are hard kind of issues to find media time in, when every minute we're worried about what Donald Trump's doing at Mar-a-Lago and what Chuck Schumer just said and what somebody just tweeted. And we sometimes don't take serious some of the big issues of our time. As a historian, I like to pull back and I look and I ask myself, who's a sustainable hero?
Okay.
300 years from now, will we all be saying, wow, that was quite a heroic person in our age? Dr. Fauci would be one, in my view. But people like Jane Goodall and her work that she's doing, Bill McKibben working on climate issues as an activist. You start finding these people that are doing amazing work, and you just want to try to give them a platform. I'm working as a historian, so I'm writing right now on Rachel Carson, who wrote Silent Spring Revolution in 1962, which led to the environmental movement, which led to media. That book led to the CBS News and ABC showing Lake Erie dead, showing the Cuyahoga River on fire, covering live the Santa Barbara oil spill. It was the media that allowed that environmental movement to kick in, because they were prioritizing it night after night after night.
Right.
And if we started doing, every network right now and radio stations started doing Planet in Peril and about climate change, it would start awakening people to that more. But alas, people feel that doesn't get ratings, or if people get bored with that, or people feel frustrated because we can't get off of gasoline soon. So the media is the hope, but it's also sometimes frustrating because we've made entertainment news.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, as a presidential historian, I'm curious whether or not the viewpoints of how good or bad or strong or weak an American president was ebbs and flows over the years, or does the opinion pretty much remain the same? Does the sentiment change?
Towards the press?
No, towards United States president through the course of history.
That's a good, interesting question, actually. Yes. Hold on one second. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Thank you. I might have to close here pretty soon. But ask me what your last question was.
It's whether or not the general sentiment of a United States president changes over time, or once you have an opinion of a president, is it pretty much cemented?
Oh, it can change. I mean, Harry Truman left office with a 27% approval rating, and people would say to err is Truman. And he's now ranked 4th or 5th all-time great presidents. Dwight Eisenhower's gone way up in the polls. People like Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter, people are giving them a big revision. Ronald Reagan, who used to be just a conservative president, is now up his boat's high with everybody, at least in the sense of rankings. So you have a chance of leaving office in low ebb, disfavor, and due to a smart post-presidency, you can help rebuild that, meaning building a presidential memoir, doing good works like Jimmy Carter won a Nobel.
Mhm.
And then people will look at your whole life, not just your presidency.
Okay. And how much time?
I'm going to have to run, I'm afraid, but we'd love to do it some other time. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll definitely have you back, because we do want to talk to you about some larger issues, but thank you so much for joining us today, Doug.
Bye.
All right, so Doug needs to sign off to go play media commentator, but we had it for 20 good minutes. What happens now, folks, let me give you a little explanation. This episode, which is just under 30 minutes, the tape version of this becomes our podcast, which is called the FMC Fast Chat. So if you are not subscribed to our podcast, please do so. It's available anywhere you like to get your podcasts. And FMC Fast Chat is done live, the same format where your questions are taken throughout the course of the talk. We do have other Fast Chats lined up. We have in February, we're doing a talk with the president of the American Express Foundation, Tim McCleman, on the future of philanthropy. We have one coming up with Hao Lee, who, if you don't know his name, you would know his work. He's reputed to be the greatest deepfake artist in the world. So we're going to talk about deepfake technology and how much it has changed over the past year. So if you're interested in news, if you're a parent or a grandparent, you need to see what's going on in the world of deepfakes. And the programming I just described is free. You just need to register in advance. So if you log on to fairmediacouncil.org, you'll see that information. Now, this session was also part of the news conference, Real and Powerful, which continues tomorrow through Friday. The full program and the speakers are all on our website, fairmediacouncil.org. After we close out of the program today, you will receive the link so that you can access tomorrow's program if you are a ticket buyer or sponsor or on our conference list. So if you have any questions, of course, you can always feel free to reach out to me, Jackie at fairmediacouncil.org. And I thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we'll see you in the morning at 9 a.m.